Right now.
Right now.
Welcome to another weekly writers group meeting 52, 52nd meeting, 52nd session of our writers group, and seeing just how everyone is feeling on this 25th as we are getting into the end of June and halfway through the year. As you can see, I have my friends with me, and if you are new to the community, welcome. This is our weekly writers group. We meet up same time, same place every Wednesday at this time as we talk about whatever writing craziness is on our mind and maybe do some writing sprints. We'll see if we can be productive today. I am Kaufman. I'm working on The Last Scarecrow, and I forgot I'm working on a really intense scene today. Oh my goodness, I'm working on a crazy scene today. I'm working on the first scene where all the animals start killing each other. All right, this is going to be quite a scene. I'll get into this. We're going to be talking about maybe some action sequences, but I'll let these two introduce themselves.
So I'm Chat Soul. So everyone knows me as Chat Soul. Today I'm actually working on a fanfiction, but Bound by Song, I will say I am in the last 4 chapters of that finally. And I actually have them outlined. I just have to go in and write them. But I'm taking a break tonight for a fanfiction that I finally got updated, and I haven't gotten it updated since September, so.
Ooh, that is so exciting. I love hearing how much progress you've been making when it started off as just a piece of flash fiction. So very, very cool.
Actually, it started off as a fan fiction, and it sounded really good for the competition, so I turned it into a short story, and then it became a novel, so.
Yeah, the evolution of ideas. Well, I absolutely love that, Soul. And then Calvin, take it away.
Hey guys, it's Calvin. Working on Storm 2 tonight, finally getting to where Oslo's gone home to see his family for the first time in like 2 years.
Yay. So it sounds like we're all making progress on our stories. It sounds like we're all making some actually substantial progress. Because I know I'm at such like a crazy part in my story, I'm curious the section that you guys are working on next. What type of like a tone are you guys working on for these upcoming sections?
Kind of at an introspective parts.
Mm-hmm.
Without giving too much away, Tomo is, since it's getting near the end, Tomo's just kind of in that moment where it's like, he thinks he knows what he's doing, he thinks he knows what he wants, and it's just, everything's technically going well except his mind, which is just like, you're thing up.
So we
to
got
the point that other people are noticing and pointing it out.
So we got deep introspection between two characters, and sounds like one character is falling apart.
Pretty much.
Okay, slowly but surely. And then Calvin, what's the tone of what you're working on?
It's a bit more laid back. Oslo has left the front. He's headed home because he was injured in the last campaign, and he's got to go home for healing and some light physical therapy. Okay. But at the same time, he's got to kind of confront the demons of his past in regards to his older brother and the relationship between him and his father.
Okay. So it sounds like some definitely some character development. Absolutely some character development. So it sounds like you guys are both very focused on character development sections. Something that's come to mind for me, I think it's probably because I'm getting close to really a big part of the story, and it's all like action stuff is what I'm hopping into. And I don't think we've talked about this before. How do we decide when you guys are working on like thinking through plotting your story, you're thinking about like what happens next? How do you guys decide what is the right tone? What is the right like pacing and tone for different parts of your story? Like I know we can speak to like common storytelling structures, sure, like midpoint, climax, a resolution, those types of things. But when you're like thinking of the story, how do you guys decide what's next? And by the way, ML, Tiara, and Maddie, welcome, my friends.
I know for myself, it depends on what happened in the last chapter. For like my fan fictions, it's more of what is the character going through at this moment in general, because I don't really do a whole lot of time skipping within a story unless it's like really long. For Bound by Song and Pirates, it's more of what happened in the last chapter, what are the characters thinking right now, and because I actually have plotted these two stories now, what's going to happen next. I actually didn't know that I was going to have 4 chapters left. I thought I was going to have 3, but then it's like, oh wait, no, Tom was actually going to go through this moment where he's just kind of breaking down and everyone's like, dude, you're freaking out and we know it. But I didn't know what I was going to do with the next chapter. And then it's like, wait, if he's going to go through this moment in this chapter, this actually opens up for the chapter I thought I was going to have to erase. And it's like, no, this actually works out and goes into it really well. So it just kind of depends on where the story is going and where it's been.
So you kind of play it out. You feel it out based on your character journey and the character, like what you feel like the character needs to go through next.
Pretty much.
Okay. So you take a very like character development focused perspective in plotting out like, okay, this is a type of thing that needs to come next.
That's pretty much what I try to.
Okay. What about you, Calvin? How do you decide?
It's kind of the same way with Soul. I mean, I just look at where they are, what's going on. Like right now, like I said, Oslo's just landed on his home world. He got picked up by his mother, and it's a more somber tone because, she's talking about, do you want to go see your brother? And he's like, I'll make sure to see him before I leave. But not only that, his mother is concerned that, hey, you're halfway through your contract, maybe you could look at getting out of your contract and, we'll help give you the rest of the money to get your ship. And he's having to reflect on himself, like, is this actually what I want? It's like, hey, do I need to, do I stay in the military? Because right now, as I said, this is kind of like the dark days of the war because they just lost to Tyrus. And now multiple worlds are under siege. And after the home chapter is done, they're heading to Gibraltar next, which is like the major campaign of the book.
Interesting. So yours is almost, and I know yours because it's more obviously more of a military war and battle that's going on. So then it ends up, you end up revolving it around where like the next major battle is leading up towards.
Yeah.
So it's almost more like event focused then for you.
It is, but there's also, like I said, you have Oslo, who is, his contract is only a 2-year contract, and then he's out of the Marines. But a lot of people are kind of pushing him to be like, we need you in this war. You need to re-up your contract.
Yeah, that's actually that's really interesting. And I mean, I think focusing on that seems like that's definitely elements of character development and heavily plotting as well, since there's so much going on there, which is actually really, really interesting. I know everyone kind of has a different, little bit of a different style when plotting it out, but I'm always just really curious if it's very character focused. And then, by the way, Sino, welcome. You said you should stay in the military. Not actually sure what you're talking about, but
I think Sino's talking about my book.
Oh, do you think he's talking about your book about if he should stay in the military?
I don't know. I'm taking a guess. I'm being
like a
little, maybe like, I started a conversation.
Wait, what do you think, Calvin? Should Oslo, should they stay in the military, or should they flee?
Technically, I mean, once he leaves the military, the story is over. So
there's no. I mean, I guess it's kind of a good point. I mean, it's like if I think of like Star Trek, if all the characters leave the Enterprise, I mean, where does the story go from there?
Pretty much.
Oh, that's interesting.
But Sino, if you're curious, the book is on KDU. You can go read it.
Yeah, the first book literally just launched. Both of their books just launched. We have with 2 newly published authors here. So, let's see if you guys want to drop the links you guys can drop the links in the chat if you guys want to drop your book links, and I'll drop them for you. So, but Calvin's book just launched. Storm Chronicles just launched. What was that, like 2 weeks ago? Week and a half.
15th, so a little over a week ago.
And that's military science fiction. Definitely highly recommend. Feels like Star Trek, space, military. It's very, very cool. And then Soul, you just launched the second book of yours, which is a science fiction. Yep. Do you say it's fantasy at all, or do you just say sci-fi?
No, there is absolutely no fantasy in my books, even though it looks it and sounds it. It doesn't really, I guess, go too far into sci-fi, but that would be the closest. Especially, it's much more prominent in the second book, and that came out on the 20th.
Right.
I'm actually trying to get the link now. So.
All right, and I just dropped that there in the chat. Yeah, so I mean, definitely, I think it's a huge accomplishment when we're obviously able to make it through, and publishing and writing, and we know it's such a journey for both of you guys. Let me think. I'm trying to think of how I determine pacing and tonality. It's interesting. I think I do it a little differently from you guys, actually. I don't think I focus on where the character is at. I think it's interesting. I think in the very beginning when I was like free writing Scarecrow, I think the first 5 to 10 pages, it was kind of character focused on like, all right, where's the hero? What would be something interesting that would happen next? But I think once I started thinking about the story as a whole, it started becoming about where is the next major plot point, and then how is that plot point going to lead them to the climax, to the ending plot point. So it's interesting. I think it's almost like I'm almost working backwards from the climax in a sense. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think
I'd say that's kind of how I did book 1.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I almost have it like focused more on the plot because I want the reader to like the main story or the plot so much.
Well, the journey is really what the story is all about. I mean, without growth, without that journey of growth, what are we reading?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And I think that's probably why in the second revision of Scarecrow, why I focused so much time on character development. It's almost interesting. It's almost like I focused the first draft predominantly on plot and then the second draft on elevating character development. And now I feel like with like what I've done so far, I feel like the story is really strong from a character development standpoint. And then like the next thing will be like cutting out the fluff.
Well, usually when we write, we're writing with the aspect of just get it on the page. So of course we're only writing the plot. And then when we go back through and do our second look, now we're elevating the characters. For a good example, Sino, thank you for going to go read the book. Please leave me a review. To give you a little thing, when I first wrote it, Adrian didn't really have as much of a drinking problem. And then if you notice, I gave him, especially when he got back to the station, a really severe drinking problem. Like I took his drinking problem from, which was probably only a 3 in the original story. Now I made it like a freaking 10. To where like he's becoming that alcoholic. He tries to recover. And then of course, after everything in the book, he goes back to being an alcoholic. And now, now I've taken that and it's like, now he's really becoming a desperate alcoholic.
But I feel like that literally made it so much better. So what made you like decide that of like, okay, I'm going to play into his alcoholism as compared to like, okay, let's give them something else to deal with? How did you feel
it's a common vice that people can relate to. I mean, we all know people who got back from the military who drowned their sorrows in alcohol. And that is a go-to vice. Mostly because it's legal.
It's illegal advice. You're right.
It's a go-to vice that, let's face facts. Drowning yourself in alcohol does help in a short-term goal. If all you want to do is just go to sleep and forget about shit, you can drink yourself into a stupor and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I chose alcohol because it was something that it was I think it would be more relatable to people than someone whose addiction is going to the thrift store and buying and overspending and blowing out their paycheck. Not that that's not relatable too, but
yeah, but I mean, I think the emotional context of it is that everyone can relate with having that vice of the thing that they shouldn't be doing, and it makes everything worse, whether or not it's alcoholism or something completely unrelated. And I think the emotional context of how does that affect me? I shouldn't be doing it, and yet my life is getting worse, and I could be losing everything. And I think that's the relatability, which is actually really powerful. I think that was a great decision.
Again, that's another thing. Besides character growth, we have to have relatable characters. It's hard to it's hard when you have a character you cannot relate to. You know, you have to have a vested interest in them, but they have to be relatable. If they're not relatable, it's like, what am I doing? I can't get emotionally invested in this character because they're completely unrelatable.
Yeah.
And you know what, Calvin? It's interesting because I ask myself that same question with the characters in Scarecrow because I have they're like such big personalities. And I'm like, well, are they relatable? It's like when you watch like Alice in Wonderland, are the characters relatable? Well, they're supposed to be extreme, big versions or big caricatures almost. So then it's like, are they relatable? And I'm like, I don't know. It's interesting. I find it fascinating.
Relatable is also kind of subjective if you think about it, because not everyone's going to have the same experiences, and some people, even if they do, they're not going to react the same way.
Oh no, definitely. People who haven't been soldiers aren't going to relate to my characters as much as people who have.
That's
So
a good point.
I'm totally okay with that. I mean, let's face facts. We cannot make a character that's relatable to everyone. We can make him something. We can make him everything to someone, but he can't be something for everyone.
Yeah. So I guess then it then comes into either thematically themes that feel as relatable to more people. And you ask yourself, like, why did stories such as like Star Wars, or why did like Lord of the Rings, why did those classics, why did they hit across such a mainstream, such a wide, broad appeal? Right? Because each character, you could argue, may or may not be relatable to everyone, but yet it spoke to connect with so many people. And I don't know. Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's like the wide cast of characters, or if it's just the specific themes that really resonated at the right moment.
I almost feel like with Star Wars, it's more the theme.
You think Star Wars?
Usually, when I hear about Star
little,
Wars, it's
little
more
guy,
not the
underdog.
characters; it's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it relates, why it appeals to so many people is also subjective. Different people like different things. I mean, some people. A good example is in the original 3 Star Wars movies. My brother's favorite movie is New Hope because he loves watching that Death Star scene over and over with the X-wings fighting. To me, my favorite is Return of the Jedi because I love watching Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader duel.
Wait, your favorite isn't Phantom Menace?
I said the original 3. Oh no, my favorite is Phantom Menace. I don't know why that movie gets such a bad rep, and I'm going to blame that on Jar Jar Binks.
It's probably because of the Jar Jar Binks of it all.
I'm going to blame that on Jar Jar Binks. Honestly, my favorite character in the whole series is Darth Maul. But it was very funny is I was watching a clip that was just the last duel between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul, and that duel is actually only 2 minutes and 53 seconds.
You know, it's kind of interesting. Darth Maul as a character is actually really interesting if you've watched all the animated Clone Wars and all the extended stuff. Darth Maul has the most interesting comeback story. But the problem is every time they involve they try to explore his story, the show or the franchise, it just doesn't pan out. So they haven't really fully explored his whole comeback, which is very intriguing, by the way. Granted, I don't think I hated Jar Jar Binks as much as most people did.
I thought he was a nice little comedic relief. but there are so many things with Jar Jar being a Sith in disguise, shit like that. It's like I feel bad for the kid who played Anakin. The fact that he just got so much hate that he can't even act anymore, and it's like he wasn't that
Oh,
bad of an actor.
jeez.
Yeah, him and
are
the
you
guy.
talking about Christian? You're talking about Christian. What's his
No,
name?
no, not
You're
Christian
talking about the
Hayes.
little one. You're talking about
Yeah,
young at.
he got
Oh, that's interesting. I
he
really
got.
because we knew how much Christian. What's his face? We know how much hate he got for adult Anakin.
I don't think he got as much hate as the kid did. The kid got so much hate that he quit acting altogether. The only other person I've seen quit acting like that is the kid who played Joffrey in
I knew you were gonna say
Game
that.
of Thrones. He apparently stopped. Apparently, he's going back to acting, but he did stop because he was getting so much hate mail. And you know what's funny is I hated Joffrey, but I wanted to go to the kid who played him and be like, dude, you were so fantastic as a Joffrey. You got death threats.
I know.
Yep. The
But
best
what's
characters are the ones where you hate the characters and love the actors.
But
Apparently,
what's crazy though is of those characters in Game of Thrones, Joffrey's not even the worst character. He's bad, of course, but like then the next one they bring with Ramsay is like Ramsay's like evil. Like it's
I don't
just
know. They're both sadists in their own way. You
mhm.
just have one that's an up and coming sadist and one that's a well practiced sadist.
I guess that's actually that's a good way of framing it. That's definitely a good way of framing it. Oh man. Memorable characters. What a great conversation. When you guys think of like memorable characters from whether it's media or books, which ones come to mind when you guys think about like really, really strong ones that like resonate with you, or maybe favorites? I'd love to hear from the chat. By the way, I saw a bunch of guys hop in. Um, let's see. Lynn, you said you're usually the opposite with doing character vibes first, and plot is usually the second draft. Which that's probably a great strategy. That's actually probably a really good strategy, starting with character development first, so that way you know your character is in place. Let's see. Paperback, congrats on the 2,000 words. I know you're going for 2,000 a day, so keep up the great work. Eva, great to see you. Welcome back. Yes. Paperback spoke to one of my favorite movies. Absolutely. The Princess Bride. What a great classic. Absolutely. Let's see. I think when I think of characters, of course, yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, because I feel like there's so many. I feel like there's so many favorites. And I try to think about who are my actual favorite characters. I don't know. I guess from Star Wars universe, I really liked Ahsoka for the longest time. I think Ahsoka is definitely one of my
They
favorites.
they've done a good job of bringing up her character.
They did a decent job. Like they did her character arc much better than they did with Boba Fett, which they really struggled with his show. Let me think. What other characters? And of course, like I know Paperback mentioned Lord of the Rings. I'm like, of course, Gollum. Like, I feel like Gollum was always such a favorite. I think anytime you have a character who undergoes such a traumatic life, and then they're twisted as a result, and that's what they become, is always interesting.
I think honestly he's interesting because it's not like he even became evil. Really, it's just more sad than anything. You can't help but feel bad for him.
I think chaotic neutral. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that would be a good description.
Mm-hmm. Because he's not really good or he's bad. He kind of only cares about the ring. So he's very only self-interested in whatever gets him closest with getting the ring back.
Not only that, you got to give the actor who played Gollum credit that he was able to have conversations with himself.
Mm-hmm. Andy Serkis was an incredible actor. I remember he like talked about his experience. Absolutely. Being able to act and being able to play crazy and have it come across realistic is very difficult, because it is so easy for it to come across just for it to not feel realistic. And speaking from a lifetime of seeing thriller and horror movies, where a lot of actors try to do just that, it's difficult. It's difficult to pull off well. Yeah. What other characters that come to mind for you guys?
I'm actually going to agree with you. Darth Maul as being a really great character comes to mind. Because it's also interesting that he went from he was a Sith apprentice to he had years of insanity to when they brought him back. In some ways, when he first came back, he tried to maintain, like, I want to be a Sith apprentice, or now I want to be the master. His brother, Savage, that was with him, he's like, you're my apprentice. But then he started to drift kind of away from that path. Besides being single-mindedly, and became more like just single-mindedly focused on revenge against Obi-Wan. Because if you ever remember when he fought Palpatine on when him and Savage fought Palpatine on Mandalore, at one point his brother goes down, and instead of continuing the fight, he broke off to go check on his brother. He didn't try to run away, and he actually got legitimately angry. Which really, if you think about it, that's not a Sith trait.
Yeah, I think it's because they really were really focusing on humanizing. They're really trying to focus on making Darth a little bit more human in that character arc, which it did. That's exactly what the brother accomplished. The brother made Darth Maul feel a little bit more likable and relatable.
I'll be honest, when I saw the movie Han Solo, the only thing that got me excited about the movie was when you saw Darth Maul. Well, that proved he was alive at this point. You didn't know what happened to him after the battle with Palpatine. You didn't know what happened.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
So now it's like, oh, so he's alive. He got away from Palpatine somehow. So that was it was awesome because it's like, oh yeah, he's still alive and still running the underworld.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like of characters that Star Wars that they're going to try to do more with, I feel like Darth Maul is one of those ones they'll probably do something with eventually.
No, probably not, because in Star Wars Rebels, he was finally killed by Obi-Wan in Star Wars Rebels. So unless they give him his own TV show, but even then,
right, but I mean, even though he's dead, they could still go to that time period. They've clearly shown that they'll hop to any time period if they want to explore more.
I just don't know what they're going to do with him. And to be honest, I'd rather them not touch him. I'd rather just leave the character on greatness than try to do something with him and be like, okay, now you just screwed that up and now I'm completely upset. Because let's face facts,
that makes sense.
Let's face facts, with Disney, especially in Star Wars, it's either great or you want to blow your head out, or you want to blow your brain out.
It's great or it sucks.
There is no middle ground.
Oh man, well, I don't know. Maybe the next trilogy will be better. Maybe the next trilogy will be slightly better than the last trilogy. Calvin, I'm curious to hear, and I see we have a few Star Wars fans in the chat as well. Why do you guys think the most recent trilogy wasn't as good as the previous two? Why do you think it struggled?
Part of it was because Rey was such a Mary Sue.
So you think Rey just didn't feel like she was like a relatable enough character?
No. It almost felt like they tried to recreate Luke Skywalker as a girl.
That's exactly what it felt like. It felt like, especially in what was that, episode 7, so the first one of the new trilogy, it felt like they tried so hard to create like the same exact vibe from New Hope, while still trying to do something different. But it didn't really feel like it felt like it was kind of like they were trying to pull in two different directions.
Well, it did. Not only that, looking like Kylo Ren. Yes, he is the grandson of Darth Vader, but let's face facts. Even without knowing that, if you just knew Star Wars, if you didn't know Kylo Ren's connection to Anakin Skywalker, you'd honestly think they were trying to copy Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what it felt like. So, and I think at the heart of the problem is they were taking the same exact. So Disney took the same exact formula that they did with Marvel, that they did, and it worked out really well with Marvel for a time. Copying actually worked out really well. That's how they led to Infinity War, which, whether or not you like the end of the Marvel, the last phase is one of the highest grossing box office movies. But I think then what they did with Star Wars, I mean, I don't know how well the movies were received in theaters. I think they did well, but overall, the like story wising, it just made the trilogy feel confused.
I think, to be honest, they were more well received by newer people than
Who
older
weren't as
people.
like, yeah, so like those who weren't as familiar with the original three.
No, 10 minutes.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Mm.
Yeah, but not only that, just personally to me, there's a lot of things about this. Is just a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very big fan of lightsaber duels, and to be honest, the lightsaber duels in the new three were just completely boring. The production
Mm-hmm.
wise, the lightsabers look fantastic. The
Mm-hmm.
blows look great when they hit, but otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you're watching. Here's also the other thing: you're watching a completely untrained person beat over a person who's completely trained,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not giving
Interesting.
me any kind of like context as to why can she win.
Gotcha. So partially the cinematography, or partially that not the choreography. So partially the choreography, and then partially the plotting behind it.
It is
Mm-hmm.
what it is. I mean, if you watch, to me, the best there is actually, for anyone who loves who loves lightsaber bouts, there is a video on YouTube called Art of the Saber. Go
Mm-hmm.
check that out. That is fantastic as far as lightsaber goes, choreography. The best one after that would be Anakin versus Obi-Wan in episode 3. But that's also
Mm-hmm.
because Hayden Christensen and, now I can't remember his name, the guy who played Obi-Wan. I'll remember it 20 minutes from now. But those two had a habit of what they were, yeah, you know how it is. They would actually, when they were not on set or they were not being used, they would be practicing. And so you saw a very high paced battle that was very like, they studied the choreography, they got it
Mm-hmm.
down to where they can move very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we haven't really seen ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is the interesting things when I pull back and I pull out from the larger picture of Star Wars and in general, really it comes down to franchising, and I think about extending the larger story and the larger universe. So like when you guys think about your stories and you think of like 10 years down the line, you've written a couple more books, you've finished the core story. Do you guys keep expanding the universe? And this is a question I'll pose to all our writers here in the community. Do you feel like it's better keep expanding the universe, tell more stories in the universe, or keep telling more stories with our main core set of heroes?
Depends on the universe.
Mm-hmm.
It's also got to be done to me in a way that can make absolute sense,
Mm-hmm.
and not just like I'm just expanding the universe because I have no new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You want to expand the universe to tell more of a story,
Mm-hmm.
not because I've latched onto this story so much I don't know how to write anything else.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess of course, using it as a fallback, because I don't know anymore. I don't have any other stories to write. Like that, of course, would be an issue. But it always, I always think of like, okay, if I have characters, do I try to develop plot lines for other characters because I know maybe readers like them, or maybe readers really enjoyed that story, or do I feel like it's more beneficial to go create a brand new universe with a new story and new plot and everything? But I guess genre definitely plays a good big part of it as well. Like Lynn said, genre is definitely a huge factor. Because I think I'm also creating. I think with Scarecrow, I'm creating a universe that has the capability to be able to tell many stories. But I don't think it's the same for every genre. A lot of a lot of thrillers and mysteries, like those are tend to be a lot more self-contained stories or self-contained series sometimes within its own universe. Hmm.
I think
fantasy seems to be the one where you're more likely to branch out and have more stories within the same universe. Sci-fi really depends. It varies on what the story exactly was. Beyond that, yeah, it's still it just kind of goes back and forth depending on the genre.
I mean, something like, for example, the Sherlock Holmes universe, it can't branch out too much farther because, let's face fact, there's only 4 real characters. There's only Sherlock Holmes, Watson, Moriarty, and that one love interest that always bests him. I cannot think of her name.
That's a really good point. But I think Sherlock Holmes is one of those types of characters. I forgot what that character type is. Where they're where their character type is kind of like a larger than life type of character, like the Indiana Jones, James Bond. Where technically, like, you're not going to expand out the universe, you're expanding out the character, the character's lifespan with more stories, because it's always a self-contained story within a different part of their life.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how those ones go. Like, there's a million James Bond movies, and James Bond, they're probably going to keep making more.
Yeah, but James Bond can always change because James Bond is not a person; it's an alias.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's an alias.
Right.
Whereas Sherlock Holmes is Sherlock Holmes. I mean, Sherlock Holmes is always going to be who he is. Now, yes, he is a larger than life person. He just greets you on the street. He can tell you He can tell you where you've been for the last 10 days.
Who doesn't want that in a character?
That is freaky when you think about that. It's like you just meet the person. I can tell you everything about you before you even started talking.
God, have you guys ever met anyone who has like a photographic memory like that?
Yes.
Oh man.
One person.
One for me too.
I have not, but that must be a great memory to have.
No,
not at all.
I wouldn't remember every slight against them.
Okay, all right, then that makes it a little bit more challenging.
Also, playing memory games with someone with a photographic memory sucks.
Yeah, they that's basically cheating at that point.
Oh man, is Sherlock Holmes determined as having a photographic memory, or he's just determined as having a high IQ?
More like,
I think it's more high IQ.
I think more like high IQ with more though of also a roundabout experience of going out and doing different things. Because like I remember one story, he knew what direction a woman was coming from based on the mud on the side of her clothes.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's always interesting how these characters, which become classic characters, end up being developed with their weaknesses and their strengths. And it's always interesting how they're able to evolve as characters over time. I don't know.
Yeah, but the evolution of characters is what makes them interesting. Especially when you give them vices or things that are really detrimental to the characters. Now the question is are they going to overcome that detrimentalness, or is it going to consume them?
And then that ends up becoming part of the what the reader wants to experience then, right? Of will they win or won't they win? Will they overcome their vice or won't they overcome their vice?
I'm not going to say it's what the reader wants. It's more like what we want.
To punish our characters,
or make them strong, or reforge them.
Okay, that's a much better way.
More we want to punish them.
Depends on the writer, rather punishing or strengthening them, depending on the outlook.
I think it depends on both. Yes, it also depends on who is the character modeled after. Because let's face facts, we all model characters after some people. Something about them
point there.
I mean, you think about it. No matter how extreme the character, he or she was modeled after someone. So the question is how much do we hate or love that person they were modeled after?
Oh, it's really funny, actually. Oh man, you know, Calvin, what's interesting is I don't think I model characters after people. I think I model them after character types, but character types are modeled
There
after
you
people.
go.
Some character types are modeled after certain types of psychological traits, or I don't know.
Yeah, I've got characters like that too. They're not modeled after a specific person, either physically or mentally. Because like the antagonist for the second book of my series, physically he is modeled after Crazy, but his personality is not modeled after him at all. It's completely different. In fact, actually, I get the feeling I modeled him after Doflamingo from One Piece, or at least I took inspiration from him. But Brennar, he was not modeled after anyone. Sonus was modeled after another One Piece character. Ox was actually modeled after my husband. So, but I've got characters that are modeled after people I know, characters I know, and then vibes that I want them to go by, I guess.
Okay. So you use the people as people that you know as kind of like the undertone, the base, the building block for the character, and then you layer on different complexities.
Depends on the character.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on the character. Because Sonus in his original version was actually just more or less copied from a One Piece character, but then he eventually became like his own character. But he still had some of the personality traits, but I changed a few things. Ox was completely modeled after my husband from the start, but then Ironwood, physically he was modeled after Crazy, and he was supposed to be a secondary character for Pirates before it became a trilogy, but then I didn't know what to do with them. But I liked how he looked, so I didn't want to change that. But then I'm like, wait, I don't want Crazy to actually be the antagonist of the book because that didn't make sense. If I modeled him after Crazy, well, it wouldn't be that strong of an antagonist. It would have changed a lot. And then it's like, say what?
I said Crazy would probably still love that.
Yeah, no, he probably would. But I needed him to be a little more. But I needed Ironwood to be a little more sadistic, so I actually am like, you know what? I like the way he looks. I'm not going to change this. I already have this idea for him. But I don't really know any people that actually have that personality, so I started looking at like characters from animes and books that I knew, and it's like, oh wait, here's somebody from One Piece that I know, and he fits this perfectly. And now, Ironwood's kind of like Doflamingo.
Interesting. So, like, when thinking about like a sadistic or evil characters, how do you guys find the right balance for your villains? Of making them like evil, that like they have to be evil enough to warrant the hero's journey, but if you go too much in one direction, in a certain direction, then they're not likable at all. It's actually kind of, that's interesting. Yeah, I think with what I'm attempting to do with Scarecrow, I think I've created a number of villains, but I think I'm giving them a defining I'm giving them a redeeming quality that is completely overshadowed by their evil or bad qualities or tendencies.
Well, I mean,
I created a sadistic. I don't think I have a sadistic character in the world yet, because the world itself is pretty sadistic.
Well, I mean, I've got Trafal in my book, who is absolutely ruthless to the enemy, but at the same time, he cares about the soldiers under his command. Yet, I have it in the newest book. At one point, he's going over a hill where they're getting shot at, and he actually, one of the guys in front of him was killed. He actually picked up his body, used it as a shield while he's going over the hill. So I try to balance.
That's a good moment.
Well, I try to balance him as ruthless, but at the same time, he does care for the people under his command. But he's not above using a body as a shield. It's like, you're already dead. What the fuck are you caring for?
Yeah.
What about you, Soul?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, because it's interesting. Like, I think, like, I try to ask myself, how could I create a villain in Scarecrow that's obviously villain and evil enough, but knowing that I'm still going to have greater, more evil threats that expand throughout the series.
I think when I created Black Smoke, the antagonist of the first book, he's actually, so he's definitely the bad guy, but compared to Ironwood, he's really not that bad. I mean, yeah, he targets Kasai's family, but yeah, no, that's definitely not good, but Ironwood is actually really sadistic, and then the two antagonists for the third book are even worse than Ironwood. One of them simply because, well, it's just her personality. She's always been kind of like that, both in the book and also the way I designed her. The main antagonist is more of she's worse because of it's situational. And designing them was kind of interesting because I actually didn't know who the main antagonist was at first. And then it's like, okay, well, I have this other antagonist that's been set up since the first book, but it didn't seem right to have her as the final antagonist. But she was too good to actually like put away because like she's actually not evil, but she's bad. But then it's like I have this other character that I could set up as worse because the situation gets so much worse. And she actually does kind of become a little on the evil side.
Who doesn't love a character who either is completely evil and has some type of redeeming arc, or is good and then ends up becoming a villain? I think, but those are both.
Oh, she wasn't good from the beginning. She just wasn't known.
He just wasn't known.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's gonna be like Harvey said in The Dark Knight. Not everyone's gonna be good till they become the villain.
Yeah. Have either of you guys ever written characters like that where they've gone from one extreme to the other?
Where they've been like the hero and then go to the villain, or be nothing and go to the villain?
Or being the villain and becoming the hero? Vice versa?
No.
In a way, yeah. One of my fanfiction characters. It was my first One Piece fan fiction. Osa was a member of was a Marine, and he ended up becoming a member of Cypherpole. For those who aren't familiar with One Piece, Marines should be self-explanatory, but Cypherpole is kind of a more or less secret organization. The higher the number, the better your rank is, the more powerful you are, and they're kind of like assassins and secret agents, sort of. Osa ended up actually defecting and becoming a pirate. So he went from one extreme to the other, and of course it was also kind of like a moral thing for him, but still.
I mean, who doesn't want to defect and become a pirate?
He did it because otherwise he would have been killed.
Okay, he didn't have a choice.
My biggest question is when they come on.
Well, he still had a choice, just more of he made his choice, and the guy he asked to make the choice decided, no, I'm not doing what you asked, I'm doing this other thing instead. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing him. He's honestly one of my favorite characters, fan fiction or not.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I mean, I think we get so wrapped up in character development and creating these really, really fun characters I think then the question is, how much time do I end up spending with this character? And then especially when you have large casts, like how much time do you give to each character and make it feel like it's right? And I have so many characters in my story. I know you guys have a number of characters in both of your story as well. So I think trying to give enough time or enough space for each of the characters' development, I think that could kind of be a tricky thing to handle effectively sometimes.
It
depends. There are two ways. Yeah, I like it. We said it at the same time. It depends. To me, the two ways to handle it is either one, do it where like you might talk about every few chapters, but every time you talk about them every few chapters, you're giving them big moments.
Mm-hmm.
Or you make the prime focus over several chapters at one person and you do like a slow burn. You know, you're slowly revealing more layers. I don't think there's a wrong or right way to do it, but it does get difficult. I mean, like Christopher Poloni, when he did every Eldest and every book out from Eldest and Brisenga and I can't remember the name of the fourth book, but he alternates every chapter where one chapter is Aragon, the other chapter is Rory, his cousin. So you do get a sense that, like, okay, this chapter is going to be dedicated to Rory. We get to see his development. This chapter is dedicated to Aragon. We get to see his development.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. It's been so long since I've read Aragorn, but you're right. I remember that it usually switches off. And that's actually also a really popular. That's a really popular format for going back and forth between two characters in romance. Romance, it's very, very popular to go back and forth between two love interests.
I do it similarly in my books, but I try to make it that the start of each book, the start of each chapter has a different character we're starting from. So we're not hearing. We might hear about the same character in the other half of the chapter, but for the most part, at least the beginning, we're going to hear about like I start off one chapter with I do mostly flip between Adrian and Oslo, but we do have Dana, we do have Horatio, and we do have Jennifer, who we're always hearing little side bits from them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess that makes sense. That definitely makes sense, especially because you start off with character development. And I think that's got me thinking, because I'm like, okay, well, since I start off with plotting more heavily, then I feel like I'm following the trajectory through the plot. So then my POV character is contingent on where the story is at. It's less contingent on like the character, but it's just the majority of the story is about Scarecrow, so that's why it's predominantly him. But it switches POV when it needs to further the plot, which is interesting. Yeah.
Reality is there is the good. You know, it's the greatest thing about story writing is there is no wrong or right way to do it.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely the right thing. I think what's interesting.
All that matters is that it makes sense.
It doesn't even have to make sense.
I think that's what it is. I think it has to make sense to the reader, right? So I think if you're going to try different things, and it creates a jarring experience, then the reader's going to stop reading. Because I think at the end of the day, right, we don't want them to stop reading. We want them to keep reading the book.
I think it depends on what's not making sense, though. I mean, let's face facts. For the most part, all of our heroes, villains, they all have plot armor, which I had to explain that to my wife. She's like, "What's plot armor?" It basically means they're either gonna win or lose based on my whims.
Or do they? Or do they have plot armor? That's always where I challenge. I was like, but it's a hard one, right? So if you're telling a story about a character, how long do you take the story before being able to kill them off or not kill them off, or kill them off and bring them back?
I don't know if you're gonna be.
If you want a good example of a character with massive plot armor, look at Luffy.
Yeah, it tends to happen with a lot of anime, though. A lot of anime characters tend to have massive plot armor, or they die and they get brought back in some way, shape, or form.
That would be
Yeah, no, that happens to Luffy a couple times. Hey, the last time it happened, though, it had to. It was the only way that his fruit awakened, so it actually made sense in that moment.
And Darth has a really good point. Like Darth said, challenging that idea with One Piece and having too much filler. Too much filler ruins the story as much as too little detail.
Yes.
Filler is so ungodly annoying. A little bit, I have to admit, isn't too bad, but One Piece definitely goes overboard. I'm a massive One Piece fan. I mean, seriously, look at my collection over here, and I have like way more back there. I love One Piece, but my god, the freaking filler, just some of it is just beyond unnecessary.
Hey, I gotta get going in a second. One thing, there is also such a thing as not exactly filler, where most people think it's your filler. Filler is just useless. No, you do have some filler where it's like it is a filler, but it might expand a sub character's storyline. So that's why I say kind of like
One Piece had that. It was the Long Ring Long Island.
Yeah, that's why I call those semi-filler. They didn't exist, but they were brought in for filler because it's like, hey, we need 100 episodes and we only got 90, so we're gonna put 10 episodes of filler. God, I wish One Piece only had 10 episodes of filler.
And I think that because I think once you start getting far enough into the show, you're wanting to know what's happening with the A story. You're wanting to know how the plot's going to be furthered in some way, shape, or form. So then when you hit points where it's a completely different, it's like a side quest, but the side quest really doesn't connect with the story. And technically the story, One Piece is really about Luffy, right? He is who the story is about. So if the story isn't some way, shape, or form telling us about Luffy's journey, since he's the protagonist and the hero, then it ends up becoming filler because it's like, well, okay, this happened, but how does it affect Luffy? At the end of the day, this really
Well, I will say in One Piece's defense, the reason they do have filler.
Later, Calvin.
See, dude.
Later.
But in One Piece's defense, the reason that there's so much filler, and I found this out a while ago, the show needed to keep up with the manga, but because the manga was going like so far forward, they needed it takes time, to animate and stuff. They had to make the filler to balance like the timing of everything.
Yeah, I guess
it makes sense. And like some of the filler did work, but
well, I think we've had some really, really great conversations, but I think I'm feeling super inspired to get some writing in. What do you think? So time for a writing sprint?
Oh yes.
I was like, all right, I'm about to go send off all my characters to fight each other. So we're going to see how this goes. So for those of you who don't know, we're going to hop into our writing sprint. So feel free to come join us. We've had some great conversations so far. We're going to be setting the sprint for 45 minutes. I believe in us. So yeah, so definitely come join us. We'll see what we can get into. We'll see how many words we can get. And I feel super inspired. So let's see what we see. I'll come join you in the chat if you have any questions, and I'll throw up the music. So whether you are brainstorming, writing, editing, revising, or you're just hanging out, come join us because it's time to write now. And that was a writing sprint. Soul, how did that one treat you? Oh,
Pretty good. I'm actually nearly done with my fanfiction chapter, which is
wow.
hilarious because I started it 2 days ago.
Oh my goodness. You're like, I've written a few books in this time. You know, I wrote my masterpiece. I wrote my memoir. I've come up with a couple screenplays.
No, I couldn't do all of that. I don't do screenplays.
Oh, that's right. I remember when you talked about that. You're like, not your friend.
No.
Oh man, how did everyone do in the chat? Hopefully you were able to make some progress with your storytelling. We went for a pretty decent little amount of time there with 45 minutes. So I felt like hopefully we were able to get some work done. I didn't really get too much work done on Scarecrow. I'm doing a lot of admin, so my admin got up, pulled me into other things, but that's all right. That is totally all right. When is my next?
At least it was important work.
Oh my goodness! The next couple of days is AWC. Woo, man! All right,
have fun with that.
That's super cool. I'm interviewing a really big, pretty notable YouTuber on the channel tomorrow, which is super cool.
Awesome.
So that'll be really cool for anybody who's tuning in. We'll be doing an AWC, another spotlight interview with Dale L. Roberts here on the channel, as we're exploring his channel, his presentation for Amazon advertising secrets with the pros. So we're going to be talking with him, learning about his session at the AWC, the AuthorTube Writing Conference this weekend, and this weekend's going to be a blast. It was well over like 50 presentations. Like there's going to be things everywhere. I'll be presenting on Saturday with the updated live stream, our updated presentation of why 97% of writers fail at writing their first book. And we're going to be doing the 2025 edition of that on Saturday. So that'll be super cool. Everyone, thank you for joining us. It's been another great writers group, as we've chatted about characters, pacing, tone, a lot of favorites, a lot of Star Wars, and a bunch of other things as well. So, and hopefully you got in some writing as well. We'll be back next Wednesday, 4 Pacific, 4, 5, 6, 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's what we got. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Kaufman, and this is
Chat Soul.
And we'll catch you in the next stream. Take care, friends.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Because it's time to write.